So, hey guys, today I'm going to show you guys why exactly Kashtira is just disgusting. If we're talking about like not so much like the archetype as a whole, but more about their parts and pieces. So, Kashtira as a deck is uh, well, depending on perspective, either unfortunately or fortunately, kind of just dog water. So, it kind of has that memento energy where you have to run 3 of a spell, but the spell is actually completely useless. So in this case, for Memento, if we run 3 copies of Fusion and or 3 copies of Bone Party, opening these is kind of in general good, but also not good, because just like Kashtira, we have the counterparts for this would be Kashtira Birth and also Kashtira Theosis. So these cards, just if we look at the card alongside its archetype, pretty good, right? Target a Kashtira monster you control, special summon one Kashtira monster with a different attribute. Similar to Memento Land Bone Party, where you destroy one Memento monster in your hand or face a field, then you take one Memento monster from your deck with a different name and either add to your hand or special summon it in defense position. So the thing about both of these effects and why they both kind of suck, you need a Kashtira monster or a Memento monster, and these don't give you access to it. So if you were to, for example, open double Theosis or double Bone Party, a lot of nothing's happening here, right? And then Kashtira Birth requires you to essentially have a Kashtira to either, I guess, normal summon or reborn, which if you don't have, it's kind of worthless. And then with Memento Lin Fusion, you can't perform a fusion summon if you do not have fusion material, you know? Same issue, you open this without Kashtira, you open this one without Memento, same deal. Kinda just terrible. And of course, in Archetype, you would run about maxed out copies of Birth and Theosis, which is pretty painful. Like, we did a hand test with the cards fully unlimited, and you still end up bricking on Theosis and Birth a good amount, which is kind of dumb, but you know, it is what it is. So, if we were to just, instead of looking at Kashtira as an archetype and just as a mini engine, here's what we can do with it. So, we can start off by putting in one of Rates Off, and then we can play something like this. So, we'll go with 1 Fenrir, 2 Unicorn, and then Rates Off. If you're feeling particularly spicy, you can do something even more disgusting, but alright. We throw in 1 Birth as well. If you're feeling like running 2 additional Garnets, you can run Theosis, as well as Rysart if you specifically open the Unicorn. You can technically make some Kashtira plays, but not really necessary. If we run just this at minimum, we can make a Rysart, just for example. But we'll just go with this for the time being, right? So if we have Birth, this gives us a search target for Unicorn, right? So if we do special summon Unicorn and then Unicorn effect activates, as the first action we take, we have no choice but to do this, whether we're playing Kashtira or not, in the sense that we're not playing like cash, you know? We're not summoning a Rysart with this Unicorn. Even if we're not doing this, our opponent does not know. So if we do go through the Kashtira combo, it'll also kind of banish 3 cards with the Rysart, and it gives us access to Fenrir later, one way or another. So if you have Imperm, you have to make the choice to just Imperm this or hold for a Rysart, right? That's usually what you're thinking of. But there's also the small off chance that you're not playing Kashtira at all, and you're just going to add Birth and use this Unicorn as something like Link fodder or just some material for some kind of extra deck play, and then you just bring back with Birth. So that's just something that could possibly happen, but it depends a little bit, I suppose. One of the other disgusting things we can do here, well, this is specific to one archetype, or one deck type, I suppose. If we are playing Deception of the Sinful Spoils. This play also exists, so we can do Special Summon Fenrir, and then Fenrir effect to add Unicorn. And then we can do Deception of the Sinful Spoils effect to send Fenrir. And this works with Diabellstar as well. So if we open either Wanted or Diabellstar alongside Fenrir, or in this case, it could be Rates Off, I guess. So we can send Fenrir, and then we can grab Diabellstar to get Deception. Deception tribute Diabellstar. After Diabellstar tributes Fenrir, or specifically sends the Fenrir to the graveyard. But whatever, not that important. So after we send the Diabellstar in this case, or the Fenrir, depending on what cards we open exactly, Fenrir added Kashtira Unicorn, allowing us to actually special summon Kashtira Unicorn. And then we have Kashtira Unicorn effect to add Birth, which then allows us to reborn Fenrir. So if we just simply reborn Fenrir later, we will just have Unicorn and Fenrir effect. And our opponent will have to deal with that. And also worth mentioning while we're here, if we have another starter, right, we don't technically have to go into Risilago. So instead of going into Risilago, we could go into Sylvia. And then this protects us from Nib. Let's count the summons. 1, 2, and then maybe 3, 4. So we're allowed one more summon, actually. And this plays around Nib, so you can't really Nib this. And even if you did Nib this, we can just bring back Fenrir later. Potentially, right? So that's just pretty painful to deal with. And of course, if you don't hit this Unicorn, this will hit you with an extra deck rip, which is somewhat valuable right now because of specifically the Fiendsmith. So if you're playing Fiendsmith as an additional engine and your deck is just basically built around this, so yeah, guess what? Just banish Requiem with Unicorn. Your whole engine is dead, and your engine probably looks something like, I don't know, this, and then 2 of these. Maybe we have 1 of Tract. Maybe sometimes we run 2. Depends. You have a copy of Lacrima. Then we have Lacrima here. And let's see, are we missing anything? Maybe you're running Egnum Day as well, I suppose. And just off of hitting this single Requiem, now your entire, like, 1/3 of your extra deck is dead. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish if you're also playing Lurry, I guess. And then you could be running a second track, so it's like 6, 11, or something like that. So around 11 cards are just deaded and gutted by Kashtira Unicorn banishing. And this Unicorn, of course, doesn't have to even banish on your turn. So if this gets imperm, this can still banish Requiem on the next turn. You're technically able to threaten that somewhat, which is kind of absurd here. And this is like Unicorn kind of being good in this like situation. But other situations, you know, Unicorn's just kind of useless. And you might as well consider Unicorn not even like an interaction compared to like Fenrir, right? Sometimes Fenrir has bad moments as well, actually, but not as bad as the lows that you get with Unicorn. So yeah, pretty good, pretty bad, depends on your perspective. But in this case, since it guts like your engine because of how the deck or like the additional engine is played, pretty brutal. And you might be thinking, okay, but I can just run 1 more Requiem. Well, then we can just banish Sequence, right? And then what are you going to do? Run a second Sequence as well? Okay, but what are you making with Sequence and Requiem? Probably Lacrima a lot of the time, actually, so I'll just get rid of Lacrima, right? Or if I am getting to activate Unicorn twice, you know, I'll just banish both of these, you know? And you kind of just brutalize Fiendsmith, essentially. Flies, honestly, you don't have as good targets to really get rid of, so yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate, I suppose, for this, but alright. Now, next thing, if we're just running these guys as kind of bodies, like if we're just running the unicorn, if it's uninterrupted, so if we don't get interrupted on the unicorn at the very least is going to produce just 2 bodies, and you can just freely special summon unicorn, or you can just get unicorn and then search birth, and then you can just discard birth for something, which is totally also viable. So in another sense, free body. Same thing with fenrir. You can do fenrir to add unicorn, and then you can pitch that unicorn for something. So in the case of Pearly, I think genuinely Pearly was the reason that fenrir, well, partially Pearly, or any deck that did what Pearly did, puts fenrir to 1, right? So if we open only one of our Fenrirs and we have 1 in deck, we can special summon Fenrir, add back Fenrir. And this doesn't seem that significant, but that means we're still at 5 cards in hand, and we can use the Fenrir we added, instead of using it as follow-up or something, we can use it immediately for something like a Delicious Memory, and we can just pitch that Fenrir. And that is genuinely just disgusting. And I have not much else to say. If you did this in a ritual deck as well, you know, just you can just tribute the Fenrir in hand, still keep the Fenrir on field. Kind of disgusting. And of course, you know, if your opponent hand traps this, they're just down hand traps for your actual main engine as well. So it's just a bad time in general, I guess we can put it that way. Hell, if we had the Deception of the Simple Spoils combined with Fenrir, we could do the same kind of play, but instead of summoning Unicorn, we just summon Fenrir. But again, that's also technically something we can do, but I guess it's more efficient because of Nibiru being a card that exists to maybe just tribute tribute the Fenrir that we add to hand. Yeah. So overall, Kashtira, pretty disgusting already, right? But then you have to consider, like, this isn't the combo. We're actually going to do a combo after summoning these guys as well. So Fenrir's effect is honestly kind of mid. It's like situational, dependent on what your opponent's playing. Sometimes Fenrir really doesn't do much, honestly. So one such deck that really brutalizes, if we're looking at just Fenrir specifically, we have Millennium or Horus. So what we could do with Horus is we can just special summon our Horus guys and then just run over the Fenrir by battle and maybe do some board breaking with just some big guys. Millennium is another deck that can kind of do that. If you activate Sengenjin, and we don't banish Sengenjin, that might be the last time you can activate Fenrir, so you might somewhat be forced to banish the Sengenjin or Golem. It depends, I guess. So if we go through both lines real quick, Sengenjin activates to place itself in the back row, and then it activates to special summon itself. But when it's special summoning itself, it is not considered a monster effect, it is considered a spell effect. So then we can run over the Fenrir by battle because this guy's bigger. If we start with Golem, we don't need to use Sengenjin's effect to place itself in the back row because it will get placed in the back row with the effect of yugioh. And then we can run over Fenrir once again. So yeah, not a great time. And also technically, if we're able to go through the whole line, we could also make like a Doom Dragon, which Fenrir doesn't activate in response, it activates a new chain, so even if we do a Doom Dragon effect to put Fenrir in the back row, there's no window for you to do anything with Fenrir. Just for example. But also the consistency for this is somewhat decent. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 Kashtira cards, meaning you have a chance to open, well, it's not like going to be exact because it's around 40%. But yeah, we'll just round that up for sake of convenience to about half of your games. You'll just randomly see a Kashtira or access to Kashtira with your rates off, Unicorn, and Fenrir that you're just playing. And this is applicable to any deck that can run them. So some decks might not be able to run this because you need no monsters or only a monsters of a certain type, like Exosister, right? So you wouldn't be able to use Martha because you have to control no monsters or only XYZ monsters for Martha, just for example, right? And you wouldn't be able to do anything with the Kashiras, or maybe you're like, I don't know, like with Flaunderies or Altergeist. If you were to special summon Fenrir, it prevents the rest of your deck from kind of functioning. I guess Altergeist is not so bad. This just locks you out of Multi-Faker, I believe. So, yeah. We can simply say, I guess, that the deck, well, not the deck, but just individually, Fenrir and Unicorn are really good. And the other Kashtras are like kinda decent if we're just looking at them as just cards, but not like as a collective, if that makes sense. Because the Kashtira cards in general, right? They're able to special summon themselves fairly easily, or get special summoned fairly easily. But if we're looking at them as a collective, they're just not that consistent, unfortunately. That's probably the main issue with the deck. But if we're looking at them as just like additive onto other strategies instead of just with itself, this is what we can kind of accomplish. So imagine you set up like an Omni Negate in this case, the Sylvia, and also you get access to both the Fenrir and Unicorn. Then we also do like some other full combo on top of this, because none of this actually required our normal summon. So technically, yeah, all I'm saying is after we resolve the Abelstar, nothing's stopping us from doing like normal summon Rosin, for example, or just whatever dumb normal summon we could do. So in this case, what would be the dumbest normal summon we could do? I know. We could do normal summon, like, we'll go with Xiamen, and then go into Isolde off of MX Saber Invoker, because why not? And then do a legitimate FTK, because this doesn't actually require that much of your extra deck either, which is another small benefit of Cash, I guess. And of course, going second, these guys aren't entirely awful either, being just big guys that can run over certain cards. So, for example, if our opponent is playing Ilya Sylvia, this has 1900 attack, 1500 defense. So yeah, we could special summon either Fenrir or Unicorn and then run this over by battle. It does have the one downside, I guess, of adding a Sinful Spoils trap to your opponent's like hand, I guess. But it's honestly not like that bad. It's just a trap, right? So whether they're running one or not, it still will deal with the Omni Negate for that turn, I guess. It will technically come back because of how this little engine works, but you know, pretty brutal stuff. So let's do a quick little example. So we're not going to necessarily need something with this high synergy, so we'll just go ahead and cut this. And let's see, let's do just whatever is, well, whatever I recently pulled, I guess. Whatever is fine. So dice rally cards and Punk. Yeah, Punk is okay because these guys are level 7, allowing you to make Baron because 7 plus 3 is 10. And you could also make Chengying. So that would be like Unicorn trigger, New Chain trigger, Chengying, Resolve. And that's just something that works. This is not like super Nibiru proof though. But yeah, if we have Kashtira Unicorn, we have this energy now, where we can just make 10s. So we have Birth, bring back Unicorn as well, which then allows us to bring back Unicorn to do something like make Baron plus Chenging. And we just go through the entirety of that. Alright, keep going. And let's see, anything good? A lot of legacy cards showing up. Memento. Memento's like not that good with just cash in general. So the only small issue, I guess, is that you need to resolve Tatsuno Tushigo, which requires you to control either no monsters or only Memento monsters. But you know what? This actually does work, right? So if we do, let's say Angwitch, Angwitch adds Tatsu, Tatsu destroys itself, sends some guys, those guys won't trigger. But then we'll go Angwitch effect. In this case, we'll do bring back Mace, and then Mace will add us Fusion. And this puts our body count to actually 0 right now, so then we can special summon a Kashtira. So not as effective in the sense that we won't be able to bait out interaction, but you know, if it works, I guess. Technically, if we do special summon Unicorn, there is also the idea of like popping Unicorn with the fusion. Well, depending on your exact sequence, right? So that just works. If we were playing, well, just whatever archetype's fine, honestly. I think it's faster to just search by UR. If we're playing, let's see. Because if we're playing Unchained, we could easily just drop these guys as bait, and then they just stay on the field. That's about it, right? With the Unchained guys, that's about all you need. So, yeah, that just kind of works. Not as synergistic as some other decks, I suppose, but you know. Just having a additional Fenrir or Unicorn on your end board just isn't that bad. And this allows you to actually gauge if your opponent is, well, if they have any hand traps, just in general as well. Special summon Unicorn, activate Unicorn, response or no response, right? So if response, depending on like the triggers, you can see if they might potentially have a Droll, Maxi, Mulcharmies, whatever. And if they do have Maxis or Mulcharmies, you can punish them a little bit with the Unicorn. And depending on the exact deck, it can become literally unplayable, right? For example, the Bestial Fiendsmith list is not going to have a good time against just Unicorn in general. Not having much of a win condition after like losing vital pieces of the Fiendsmith Strat engine. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.